Hello and welcome to the Musical Instrument Investigator. Today we're on the website of French auction portal Inter-Enchères. We're going to have a look at an auction by Vichy Auctions of France. Now, those of you that are new to the channel, Vichy is a big auction house in France and they do lots of musical instrument auctions throughout the year. They tend to group them together as well, so there's actually 3 Vichy auctions coming up soon. This is the first one, which is finishing on the 4th of June. It's the 30th of May, or just about to go to the 31st here at the moment, so you do have a few days left to go. The way these auctions usually work is the first one is like the lower tier stuff, then the second auction is like middle, and then the final auction is like the higher end stuff. So we're starting at the lower end here. One thing about Vichy is that they really churn stuff out. 402 lots, it's an incredible amount. Because these are big French auctions, these auctions are full to the brim with French violins and French bows, which to some people is like heaven. For me personally, it's a little bit tedious just because a lot of the stuff is the same French workshop miracle stuff churned out over and over again. Good instruments, perfectly fine, but from a kind of visual aspect a little bit bland for my taste. Obviously the French bows, really interesting stuff going on there, but there's just so much stuff in these auctions it can be a bit difficult. So I will do my best to get through this auction and just kind of speed through it and just try and concentrate on things which are really interesting, because otherwise we would be here for hours looking at the same JTL, Lebert, violins, whatever you name it. You'll see 100 of the same kind of violin and the same bow in this auction. It's just the way that it is, and as you progressively get up to the other auctions, then you'll start to see a bit more diversity and some more interesting instruments. But let's remain positive. So the buyer's premium is 25% on this sale, so whatever the final hammer price is, you need to pay 25% on top of that. So remember, this is a French auction, so import export fees if you're shipping outside of France, CITES restrictions, ivory, tortoiseshell, Brazilian rosewood, etc. will apply, so you need to check all that stuff. You can see all of the terms and conditions on the website of the auction house. Usually I think Vichy, if you want something couriered, you need to arrange your own courier, but they might have other services. Just check it out and see what you can do. So yeah, before we get started trying to get through this auction, I'd just like to say, if you do enjoy these videos, please consider subscribing, like, comment on, turn on notifications, because it really does help. So yeah, we're going to kind of look at a few things and ignore some others basically. So let's start off with the first lot we've got here, a miniature violin by René Morizon, made in Miracle. That is a surprise. 1960. Yeah, €200. Let's see. I mean, beautiful piece of wood, you can't really argue that. So yeah, nice enough kind of scroll, interesting. €200, hard to say. There's definitely a market for these kind of things. It needs a setup and a bridge. It is very nice by this size of instrument. It's clearly of quality, but limited appeal, I would think. Anyway, so that is the first lot. We're straight in with the Lebert Humbert stuff here, unsurprising. So Miracle, early 20th century, €500 on that. So 359 length of back. Fairly nice one, to be honest, for the first thing. Obviously some kind of repairs coming here from the F hole, a few bits, needs a bridge, etc. Some varnish repairs, but all in all could be worse. Some funny things going on up here, but we will see many more of those. Actually, from a estimate point of view, we're already kind of fairly high. There are other auctions that they do which are kind of student-ish, kind of, I guess, affordable auctions, and they start really low, and that stuff really is quite terrible. So this is already a little bit better. So got a 20th century Miracle violin here with a Guarnerius label, but this is a Guarneri style, these kind of slightly aggressive F holes. It's got a Boucher label, 357 length of back there. Yeah, I think it's okay, not particularly exciting. Quite wide-grained spruce here, which is interesting, so not the highest quality. Clearly needs a bit of work here and there. €500, depends if that's what you are into. So we are just going to have to keep churning on, because we will really struggle otherwise to get through. But we actually interestingly have some German instruments, so I feel like we probably should look at some of these. But which one? Maybe this German violin at the beginning of the 20th century with a Strad label. Very typical kind of German trade violin of that period. 360 length of back, open kind of front join there. We could look at everything, but let's not. German viola, late 19th century. 389, quite interesting elongated F holds here. 389 is a little bit small, I guess, for a modern player, but you know, not too bad. Once again, looks fairly like a workshop instrument there. 1,000 to 1,200 euros on that. So we're actually starting quite high already, to be fair. Miracle violin, 1880. More Lebert stuff here. Let's have a look at this 19th century German violin with a Lupo label, 355, with certificate from Anton van Hoof in Flemish. Okay. Interesting varnish here, where this is kind of varnish has started to kind of crackle or fail a bit. Quite an interesting colour actually. So neck graft there. Yeah, the varnish is kind of slightly odd. So numerous restorations and repairs. You can see these kind of cracks here, so it needs a fair amount of work, but yeah, it looks interesting. 600 euros on that. What else do we have here? Mark de Kirkin violins, another viola here, German viola. Franz Zimon label there, 397, slightly bigger there, 1,000 to 1,200 euros on that. Not super exciting and a little bit worse for wear. Open centre join there, or kind of say repaired centre join there, not very nicely. So a few things to bear in mind there. But after my rant, this is actually a bit more of a diverse auction than normal. Some German violins here, so we can't look at everything. Let's look at a JTL, because we're going to see lots of JTLs, but why not? Early 20th century one there, 359. That's your kind of lower tier one, fairly standard. 600 euros. That's quite a high estimate, I would think. Not really a fan of those. Right, so this is a kind of instrument that I personally like and find quite curious, although this one is giant in size, 365 length of back. So this is like a kind of a French violin, not from Paris, basically kind of the outside. The same, you get this a bit with London as well. You get the London makers and then you get the kind of countryside makers. So 18th century there with a Cousineau label. Yeah, it's clearly had a bit of a life and needs a bit of work there on the varnish, but it has this kind of quite nice golden yellow varnish of those kind of French violins. 700 euros, so you know, it's got potential, but this is very large, so it might be uncomfortable for some people. More Mircore stuff here. Maybe we'll have a quick look at this one. Violin made in the workshops of Leon Mortin in Mircore, 1927. Fairly standard, to be fair, so probably should have ignored that one. More Mircore stuff here, German 19th century Mircore there, which can be fairly interesting. More modern violins. Let's have a look at this modern violin bearing the label and iron mark of Pablo de Barbieri. Okay, 353 there. Very difficult to tell with these kind of instruments exactly where they're from. Right, an 18th century violin, probably from the Austrian school, 359 length of back there. Once again, it's had a lot of kind of work done to it. Interesting enough, but slightly odd kind of outline there. 1,000 to 1,500, and the estimates are quite strong in this auction. Right, violin, probably French late 18th century or early 19th century. 359 length of back, so a bit more friendly on the back length. That I quite like. It's had a fair amount of things going on. It does look like a sound post crack, broken corn table, and on the bottom restoration on one side. So it's got a sound post crack on the back, so bear that in mind. And it also has one on the front. So I quite like these F holes, slightly boats looking upper and lower bouts, almost a bit too rounded, but yeah, shame about the sound post crack on the back, but otherwise fairly interesting. Another French violin, late 18th century, 356 length of back. So interesting purfling inlay up there. It's quite charming. Once again, massive sound post crack at the back. So yeah, I mean, some of the estimates coming in this sale, they're pretty high considering the condition, for sure. Miracle cello here, 20th century, 800 euros. Yeah, so it's got a sound post crack on the table. I think not super exciting, but for 800 euros for a cello, I'm sure there'll be someone interested. Or JTL stuff here. German violin there, late 19th century, we can ignore that. Now we're on to C of French bows. More sort of cello bow there. Let's have a look at the JTL bows. JTL, they're assigned Buthold à Paris. German frog there. Okay, so it's got a few different parts on it. 400 euros on that. Definitely needs a bit of work across the board, but yeah, some of these JTL bows pretty nice. Got a German bow here, Morizot. Cello bow stick by Kino Huri. Frog by Emile Houchard. Button by Victor Fatigue. Well, it's like a kind of who's who of French makers. Silver mounted. Yeah, so this is basically like a Frankenstein bow. See, this looks like there's repair going on here, possibly. It looks like it might be pinned. The big issue, this collar basically means that the stick is kind of has split at some time, and this has been reinforced with this metal collar, which is really unfortunate and kind of difficult to go back from that. This is a repair that someone wouldn't do these days anymore. This is something they used to do. They would find other ways to glue back the wood, or they would glue it together and then bush out the inside and then put a plug in and re-drill the thread for the adjuster. They wouldn't do these collars anymore, so that really kills a lot of value from bows. But still, 800 euros is quite a fair estimate. But this big chunky button, which really doesn't, this chunky adjuster that doesn't really fit in, it's a bit of a anomaly there. So, but anyway, interesting to see. Some other bow stuff here, nothing super exciting. Don't write off German bows, because German bows can be really nice. I'll have a look at this German cello bow, 20th century, silver mounted. So some frog has some issues there. Small chip at the tip of the head. So I think it's lost the tip there. And let's see what else we've got here. Violin bow stick by Pierre Husson, known as Husson de Fort, in exotic wood, signed Louis Bazin. So you can sometimes get bows for fairly good prices if they're not made out of Pernambuco. So you can see we've got 9 pages left to go. Okay, we've somehow gone on to an issue here with the catalogue, so I'll try and work out how I can fix that temporarily. Not sure what happened there, but the website decided to crash, but we are back now. So a few other bows here. Here's a violin bow by Roger Francois Lot there, 1,000 to 1,200 euros on that. Then we're back onto instruments. So Miracle stuff here, or JTL. German violin, 18th century. Let's have a look at this. Gedler label, 359. Length of back, some worm tracks. Yeah, it's probably an instrument that with a bit of TLC could be fairly nice. 359 length of back, 1,500 euros. You have to weigh up if it's really worth it for the effort to get it back up and running. Okay, this is a curious one. Violin, probably English, late 18th century, very rugged. This instrument is more than 100 years old. Okay. Beautiful back, actually. It's really nice. 800 euros. Just seems really, really high. I'm not sure if this is missing this piece or if it's kind of just separate. But big kind of crack there. They also don't say how big it is. Do you know, I think the estimates in this auction are a little bit off, which is slightly odd. Another JTL, Kuzno. I said a lot of these Miracle stuff, they're, you know, good instruments, but they're all very similar. So French provincial violins, late 18th century, from the Grand Gérard school there, 800 to 1,000 is the estimate on that. 20th century violin with a Scarabotta label there. Okay, 3 to 4,000 on that. 352 length of back. Interesting F holes on that one as well. These pin marks, quite nice choice of wood. An interesting kind of pale orange varnish. Don't think these are cracks. This is interesting lines in the wood here. So yeah, slightly curious looking instrument, that one. Quite like it, but not quite 3 to 4,000 euros. Let's have a look at this JTL, why not? Can't ignore all of them. 500 euros on that. Actually not too dissimilar from the one that we looked at earlier, so that kind of reinforces that idea. More Miracle stuff. 20th century Ornati label, Lebert Humbert. Another JTL. Should we give it another chance? Is it going to look exactly the same? This one actually a little bit nicer here. 600 euros. Yeah, a bit nicer, that one. So looks like some interesting shading going on around these F holes. More Lebert Humbert. Right, another interesting violin. So 20th century violin with an Antonazzi label. 357 length of back. 2.5 to 3. Fairly curious. 19th century Miracle. Right, a violin probably by Nicholas Vasich, made in Seattle in 1926. Cyrillic inscriptions on the back. Okay, 3 to 4, 360 length of back. Quite a nice looking violin, actually. This so far is probably one of the nicest looking instruments, at least from the front. And okay, interesting. Slightly curious one there. Yeah, interesting. Fair few pictures on there. Not really a fan of this. If this wasn't here, I think this would probably do a lot better. But quite a nice violin, nice varnish, and looks quite nicely made. So that is an interesting one so far. More JTL stuff here, more Miracle. Like some of these violins probably have really beautiful backs, but they're just all very generic. Right, Miracle violin made around 1870 from the Grandjean school, quite popular actually. 600 to 800, has this slightly kind of interesting varnish that's quite bright, almost luminescent. 358, head replaced later. Really nice back actually on that. Varnish is very nice. That's a different head or a different neck. Big bass bar crack there, F-hole crack, so a lot of stuff going on there. Definitely needs a lot of work. More 20th century violins here, kind of slightly Guarneri-esque F-holes there. Violin from the German school, made around 1800. Repair signature of Pulpunat. Okay. Doesn't look like anything super exciting. German viola. It's good to have a look at violas. It looks fairly modern. 407. Right, back on to bows again. So we've got a few kind of French bows here. Violin bow of the Pajot school in ironwood. Bow button. I quite like these ironwood bows. Violin bow by Morison Frère, made around 1940, signed Lupo, 1000 on that. I like that lapping, it's really quite nice colour. More French bows here. Let's have a look at this. Viola bow by Roger Francois Lotte. Silver mounted with probably later button, good condition. Okay, interesting figure on that wood. Violin bow from the Simon school by Genet. Actually, this looks kind of fairly nice. By Genet violin bow signed Roger Jerome, mounted nickel silver. Needs a bit of TLC here. The faceplate is coming off, but I quite like it in a way. I do like a solid silver button. Actually, I think or adjuster. I'm always drawn to those. I think some sticks here, JTL bows. You're going to see lots of JTL bows. Violin bow by Gustav Prager, tortoiseshell mounted. It's a slightly odd looking one, €2,000 there. Prosper Colas, Bazar, Lot, all the same kind of names coming up again. Lebert, Bazar, etc. Let's have a look at this violin bow by Charles Alfred Bazar, made around 1960. €1,000 on that. Now back onto instruments again. 19th century miracle. I think we haven't looked at any of these yet, so it's time to look at one. Oh, really nice back on that one. Yeah, I like that. That's very beautiful. 359 length of back, €500 to start. Yeah, some of these 19th century miracle ones I can just about deal with. I do quite like. So, more Lebert Humbert, 3/4 Grandjean, Cousineau, early 19th century German violin, probably from the Saxon school, rear cleat detached. Okay, 357 on that. Don't think it's anything super good. €500 just seems quite high. It seems to be a running theme in this auction. This actually looks quite nice. Miracle violin around 1900, JTL. Yeah, quite like that one actually. This is fairly nice. Interesting. I'm not sure if that's woodworm or something like that. Tononi label on that. 353 length of back. Yeah, needs obviously a fair amount of work. Missing the saddle there, but quite like that as JTLs go. 19th century German violin here with quite big F holes there. Really quite nice colour to the varnish, but this looks like it's been messed around a bit. Interesting 7/8 cello by Charles Flambeau, made in Miracle 1780, 2 to 2.5. Do feel like some of these we saw last time in the last auctions, but I just look at so much these days that I really struggle to recall. Miracle with the Maggini double purfling, more Lebert Humbert, Miracle violin 1800. Let's have a look. The older stuff is usually interesting. That is fairly generic. Lebert Humbert, violin by Ernst Gleisel, German violins, seen a lot of those. Okay, this is quite nice. 18th century violin bearing a label of Tononi. Head replaced, more recent, various breaks and restorations, 354 length of back, 3 to 4. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a odd outline, isn't it? And it has some quite unsightly repairs to it. So that is quite unfortunate. Looks like maybe replaced wood or something here. Maybe not, maybe it's just bad cracks. But the whole thing looks a bit like a patchwork. See, I'm not sure what's going on here, so a little bit unfortunate. 3 to 4, oh wow, that's like, you'd want it to come back with like a pretty good like Italian dendro or something, I think, if you're spending that money, because this is very asymmetrical, in a pretty terrible condition, slightly odd corners and purfling. Don't know, it's curious. It's the kind of thing that I would buy, but not for 3,000 to 4,000 euros for sure. JTL, Mircore, 20th century cello there, the label and iron mark of Ordino, looks fairly standard, 500 euros on that. Cellos seem to be selling very well at the moment. 19th century violin, probably from the English school, iron mark on heel for Hodsole, London. Okay, so it definitely needs a bit of work there. Not really excited by that, I'll be honest. Mircore again. 20th century German, let's just have a look at this anyway. That's actually not bad, with a Puglisi label, 354 length of back. That's kind of nice enough, really. 700 euros. I think everything in this auction's a little bit higher than I expected, but I quite like that. That's actually not awful. Right, double basses, which I do like to see, a nice double bass. Early 20th century Mircore wormholes on that. A few other bits going on. Interesting kind of replaced head, I presume. Yeah, curious. Back on to bows again. Fretschner bow there. Good maker. Good German maker there. More Mircore stuff. Violin bow by Charles Nicholas Bazar there. Silver mounted. Broken head. I was thinking that estimate is a bit low. A nasty crack there. Could probably be made to look a bit better by a good restorer. Another Bazar school bow here. It's actually quite nice looking. Frog and Button by Charles Alfred Bazar. Good condition. Yeah, interesting, the hair creeping over the edge there. What else do we have here? Martin School stick. Let's see if there's anything super interesting. Not so much, we'll move on. Bow stick by Jean-Francois Dabert. 500 euros on that, quite a nice head. Fairly good condition. Well, that'll do. Houflac violin bow, silver mounted, frog and bottom from another bow. 800 to 1,000 on that. Emilou Charpère, Joseph Martin, Fight Cold. I think we can carry on a bit. 20th century Mircore, more Mircore stuff there. Let's have a look at this 20th century Mircore violin. Kind of fairly nice back, but also fairly generic. More Mircore JTL stuff. Same here, all this Lebert Mircore stuff. Right, 19th century violin with a Mariani label, 360 length of back there. 2 to 2.5. One of these kind of slightly odd things again, odd purfling. Really bizarre choice of wood for the top. So yeah, curious, but very, seems estimate is very high. But I don't really watch the Vichy sales at the end to see if any of this stuff sells, so I don't know, maybe they do sell it for that kind of money. More Mircore stuff here. More JTL. Right, 20th century viola bearing a label Badalassi, 420, so it's a good modern size. Actually quite nice wood and varnish there, but pretty odd looking thing from a shape point of view. I think potentially not the greatest quality of wood either. I'm not sure. I don't think this is a, I don't know, it's hard to say if this is a crack or not. Kind of half thinking that it's like a mineral deposits in the wood rather than a crack, but it's very unfortunate because it doesn't look good. Another Mircore violin here. Right, okay, cello by Louis Fourier Gérard, known as Gérard Magie. 1830 there, €500 on that. It's in a pretty bad state, unfortunately. More JTL, more Mircore German violin. Right, 18th century French violin with a Steiner label. Newer replaced head. Soundpost crack. Yeah, it's in a bit of a condition. 355, €600 on this. Once again, it's a bit of an oddity. It's curious, but I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit too odd. 20th century German cello with a broken heel. Yeah, not particularly interesting. Viola, French province, late 18th century. 392 length of back there, 400. Interesting enough, but needs some work. More bows here, definitely worth looking a bit closer if you are interested in bows or in the market for bows. Violin bow from the workshop of Emile Houchard there, €600. Interesting frog. So some German bows here, more JTL stuff. Let's have a look at this violin bow by Kunio Huri, signed taut. Right, interesting head. It's kind of quite slender, elongated head on that. That's quite interesting. A few more French bows here and German bows. Viola bow by Francois Lot, mounted in nickel silver, 68 grams there, €1,000. Right, a few more bows here. I got a Frechner in there. That looks in very good condition. So Frechner signed, mounted in silver, fairly good condition, 2 to 2.5. Frechner family, pretty regarded makers there. More kind of French stuff here. Ooh, and now we're moving back onto instruments again. Right, what else do we have here? So 20th century violin, Eastern countries, Mircore violin, 18th century German, let's see, with a Pandolfi label, interesting. 365 length of back, that's quite large. Really, saying 18th century, okay, curious. €600. More Lebert Humbert. Right, 20th century violin, probably from the Italian school, bearing an anti-Nazi label. Light restoration, 356, 6 to 8 on that, so they're going in fairly hard on this. Nice back, to be fair. So it is quite nice looking, interesting corners, so fair enough to that. 68. 20th century Mircore violin with a label and iron mark for Sylvestre and Mocatel. 358, the double purfling there. Maybe not the most advanced varnish. Lebert Humbert. Right, okay, a violin made around 1750, bearing the label of Castellani, head replaced later, different restorations. 358 length of back, 8 to 10 on this. Okay. Not really seeing anything super exciting to me, but there you go. Lebert Humbert here, another 18th century German violin with a Steiner label and Sebastian Dallinger label, head replaced. Kind of, oh, it's one with the kind of lion head that's a little bit clunky there. Arching looks a little bit bulbous on this one. Mircore stuff, JTL, more JTL, Mircore 3/4 cello, more Mircore viola, small German viola. Second part of the 18th century. 383, yeah, that is quite small. Oh, it's got a nasty replaced head as well, like kind of Similar to the lion head style, but it's slightly different. I mean, maybe it is still meant to be a lion, but it's a bit different to the normal ones. More Mircore stuff here. Okay, so they've got a Lebert Humbert here for 1,000 to 1,500. So let's see. Yeah, fairly nice back, but it's quite standard. Mircore violin here. Violin by Didier Nicolas here. I mark Didier Nicolas Ain. Yeah, it looks that kind of shape. So many of these about, really is pretty crazy how many of them are around. JTL, German violin. A few more bows here. Let's see if there's anything of note. Got a JTL bow here, signed Martin, silver mounted. Fairly nice head on that. Right, violin bow by Eugene Cugnot, 800 to 1,000 on that. Let's see what else we have. Violin bow by Louis Bazin, mounted in nickel silver. And let's see, violin bow by from the Martin School, silver mounted. Interesting. Is that silver mounted? Doesn't look like it to me. Certainly not. The adjuster looks like it's nickel mounted. But okay, 800 to 1,000 on that. And we're moving on to another page. More bows here, Morizot, etc. Marcel Lapierre there. Let's have a look at that actually, so we haven't looked at Lapierre. Definitely needs some restoration there on the frog and some other places. 800 euros estimate. Violin bow stick of Morizot. I quite like this large eye from an aesthetic point of view. Later German frog, 600. Bazin. Let's see. Right, instruments again. Lebert Humbert, JTL, 3/4 cello, Lebert Humbert. Mircore violin, Lebert Humbert, another JTL again. So you probably thought I was joking just about there being like 100 of each one of these things, but there legitimately always is. When we move on to the other auctions in other videos, then it gets a little bit more interesting, or better quality of those ones as well. French violin, provincial, 18th century, head replaced, 359 length of back, 700 to 800. Kind of curious enough, but maybe not super exciting. I quite like those F-holes, quite interesting. Okay, Mircore cello, Mircore violin, Lebert Humbert, blah blah blah. Let's see, cello from the Borlier family, made in Mircore 1830. 77 with some worm. Quite a squarish, quite a blocky cello. French violin bearing CFVO mark under the heel. Okay. 20th century viola, 2.5 to 3,000 there. Made in copy of Hannibal Fagnola, 402. Fairly nice back. 19th century cello there, the Ruger label. Interesting scroll though. These gouge marks, and yeah, just in general quite curious choice of wood at the back. This massive knot here. It's quite interesting. Also some bits and pieces going on. Yeah, slightly interesting. 500 euros on that. Another Mircore violin. More Mircore stuff here. German violins, JTL. Fairly standard. Some more bows here. Let's see if there's anything interesting. Violin bow from the Picat School, made around 1860 in exotic wood, 1200 to 1500 there. Okay, Bazaar. Let's have a look at this Bazar bow here. Okay, 500 on that. A few more bows here. Violin bow from the Semont school, made around 1960, 1000 to 1200. An interesting head on that, almost a kind of Kramer-ish head. That's quite interesting. More Frère, Nicolas Bazar, JTL, Bazar, German bows. Right, back onto instruments again. Violin, probably Italian, bearing the signature of Giovanni Dre, made in Turin, 1930. Restored headstock 356, 527 on that. Yeah, quite nice choice of wood on that. Interesting. It really is difficult to know some of these things where they've actually come from. Mircore violin there, more Mircore stuff. More Mircore. Right, another double bass. Probably contemporary German half-size double bass. Okay. 600 euros on that. Yeah, it's kind of interesting enough. Speaking of interesting, we've just gone to the wrong one there, but interesting 20th century violin, made as a Grancino copy. 2 to 3 on that. Yeah, I think that's quite interesting. And neck graph there looks to be kind of fairly well made, 354 length the back, so that's an interesting lot. More Mircore stuff. Double bass, 20th century Mircore, 200 euros to start on that. And quite nice back actually, nice choice of wood. It's having a lot of cracks on it, unfortunately. More Mircore stuff here, JTL, German, Mircore violins, all fairly standard. Let's have a look at this 18th century French violin with a Gavinese label, 358 length back. Very similar to a few others we've seen in this auction. It's very, very repetitive. German violin, 7/8 violin. Some more bows, Bazar. Let's have a look at this one. Violin bow from the Bazar school, broken in the head again. It's a shame, that could have been a nice bow. Wonder if, the head is there. I was going to say, does the head still exist? So that needs a bit of work there. So Lebert cello bow, signed VJ Ferrelli. There. A few more bows here. Let's move on. We're getting closer now to the end of the auction, so we are making progress. Violin bow by Prosper Colas, made around 1900. Okay, Morozor Frère lot. Okay, Morozor, Bazar, Pace old cello bow here, actually. Silver mounted, fairly good condition. Definitely needs a bit of a clean, I think. Morozor Frère. So let's have a look at this. Violin bow by Victor Francois Fatigue, 1930s. Key to head, fairly good restored condition. So it's had a bit of a accident. It's had a repair, probably some spline there. Shame that this is so visible though. You would have hoped that they could have maybe covered that a bit more. Anyway, 19th century Mircore violin there. 600 euros. A really nice back on that. A lot of the Mircore violins have some really interesting backs, so that's nice. The 19th century violin with a Strioni label, apparently. Yeah, interesting scroll actually on that. It's kind of really interesting, like almost like ball-like eye, and quite curious how this kind of curves around like that. It's just slightly interesting, but anyway, 1500 to 2000 on that. 19th century composite violin, retouched background, 3.5 to 4. Once again, really nice backs, so some good backs in this auction. Right, 19th century composite French violin. Definitely needs some TLC, but interesting back again. Composite 19th century interesting double bass with a Johann Georg Helmer head replace, 4 to 5. I mean, that's a really interesting double bass. I mean, I have to agree, it is one a pretty bonkers shape there. And this, yeah, what is going on with this head? It's really, really odd. So that is pretty cool. Contemporary violin, labelled by Lorenzo Bergonzi, Manchester, 1974. Looks kind of nice enough, whatever it is. 354 length the back there. 18th century violin, probably from the English school with a Testore label. Okay. Violin, probably Italian, late 19th century with a Calcaneus label, 3 to 4,000 on that. Yeah, very square and really interesting wood choice on that. Yeah, very curious. 3 to 4 seems a bit high. 20th century violin there, 800 to 1,000. Quite nice back and varnish on that. Quite like the marks around the scroll with a Presender label. These just goes into this vague territory of what actually is it. Late 19th century violin here. We're starting to pick up the pace here with a Guarnerius label. Quite a nice back. Contemporary violin with a Carlo di Girolamo label, made in Milan, 1987. Looks a little bit patchy on the varnish, 2 to 3. Right, 20th century viola, 469 length the back. That is absolutely huge, so that's going to be interesting for someone to play. 20th century cello with a Riccardo Simonazzi label, 324. Interesting wood choice on the back on that one as well. Okay, late 18th century German violin, 360 length the back, 800 to 1,000. Composite violin, probably Italian, late 18th century, 5 to 6,000 on that. Interesting back on this, like this knot detail. I think that's interesting. Copy of certificate from Chardon and Fee, 1928. Yeah, it's definitely a curious one. 20th century violin, or 20th century stuff here. Violin made in Germany around 1790. CFS Casseur's signature, 1,500 to 2,000. That's pretty unfortunate crack there down the back of that. Mircore viola, let's have a look at that. 800 to 1,000, 404 millimeters on that one. 20th century viola, iron mark for quinoil, 2 to 3, 405, fairly good length there. Mircore violin, 1890, why not? Let's have a look at Mircore violin as we're getting towards the end of the auction. German violin, late 18th century, definitely needs a fair amount of TLC on that. Quite like that scroll there. French violin, second part of the 19th century there, 361. Once again, yeah, really nice kind of back there. That's pretty good. Another Mircore violin. Yeah, that's quite nice. 1900 with a mark for Silvestre and Moccatel. 800 to 1,000. Doesn't say what size the back is. That's actually quite nice. That one I must admit. 20th century German viola with a Strad label, 404 length of back, quite nice wood there. Varnish looks a little patchy. 3/4 musical violin. Right, some bows here. Bazar, bow there. JTL, Bazar, Morton Frère, Bazar, Roger Francois Lot. We're on to the last page. Not sure how many more lots there are. Probably not too many. Bazar. German bow there. Louis Bazar. Poisson. Labert. Roger Frère. See if there's anything particularly interesting. Violin bow by Pierre Malines around 1900. Head and collar checks. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Morizot again. I think that is probably it. So let's have a quick look at this violin bow from Morizot, 1950. 600 on that. So yeah, that is the Vichy sale for the 4th of June. Have to say, I didn't hate it as much as I normally do. Kind of fairly interesting, actually, when we skip a lot of the generic stuff. Bows not as interesting as they usually are, I don't think. Few curious kind of composite Italian weird things going on in terms of instruments. So there are some interesting ones for sure. And definitely worth having a look. We're encountering this error again for some reason, so I'll investigate that again. Yeah, not entirely sure what's happening there, but the website does seem to kind of crash when I start criticizing Vichy. But anyway, yeah, interesting enough auction. Actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would. Bit too many lots really, but definitely some stuff worth looking at. I think the estimates overall are a bit high, not sure why that is, but in any case, interesting auction. I'll put a link in the description, check it out and see what you think. Thanks a lot for watching, really appreciate it, and I shall see you on the next video. Bye.